Every morning, you do something remarkable. You look in the mirror, and you recognize the face. Not because someone told you who you are, not because you checked a document, but because somewhere in your brain, a connection fires, a recognition lands, and the face looking back at you is yours. Yours. Continuous with the face from yesterday, from last year, from childhood photographs you can barely remember taking. You trust this completely. You've never questioned it. But here's something almost no one talks about. Every night, between the moment you closed your eyes and the moment you opened them, your brain did something to you. Something deliberate and irreversible. It edited your memories. It deleted some of what you experienced. It rewired the connections between your neurons. It processed the emotions of yesterday and changed how you feel about them today. You didn't consent to any of this. You weren't conscious for any of it. And when you woke up, you had no idea it had happened. The question is, how do you know the person looking back at you in the mirror this morning is the same person who went to sleep last night? And the deeper question, the one we're really here to ask, is whether that's even the right word. Same. For most of human history, we thought sleep was a rest, a pause, the body powering down to recover, the brain going quiet, the self waiting on standby until morning. We were wrong. Sleep is not a pause in your life. Sleep is where a significant portion of your life happens, just without your participation. Here's what neuroscience has established in the last 3 decades. During REM sleep, your hippocampus, the brain region responsible for forming memories, replays the events of the day, but not in sequence and not in detail. It replays fragments, scenes, emotional impressions, and as it replays them, it does something extraordinary. It decides what to keep. Not everything you experience today will be there tomorrow. The brain applies criteria we don't fully understand, and some memories are consolidated, transferred to long-term storage, reinforced, connected to older memories in ways that change their meaning. Others are discarded, not forgotten gradually, the way things fade over time. Discarded tonight. Gone before morning. Now, let me make this concrete. In 2015, a researcher named Robert Stickgold at Harvard Medical School ran a series of studies on what he called memory consolidation during sleep. But the finding that stayed with me wasn't a graph or a data point. It was a single patient. A man in his early 50s who had undergone a minor cardiac procedure, the kind where you're under general anesthesia for a few hours, then sent home the same evening. By every clinical measure, the procedure went perfectly. But the next morning, his wife noticed something. He remembered the procedure. He remembered checking in, and the nurse's name, and signing paperwork. But he had forgotten their anniversary dinner from 2 nights before. A dinner they had been planning for weeks, at a restaurant they'd wanted to try for years. Not vaguely forgotten. Gone. When she described it to him in detail, he had no recognition at all. It felt like being told a story about a stranger. The dinner had happened before the anesthesia. The memories should have been intact. But the anesthesia had interrupted the consolidation window, the night of sleep when those memories would have been confirmed and transferred. Without that sleep, the brain never locked them in. He didn't lose the memories because of damage. He lost them because the editing process that was supposed to preserve them never ran. And here's what matters. He didn't know anything was missing. He woke up feeling completely like himself. The gap wasn't labeled. It was simply absent. This is what the brain does every night, without intervention, without surgery, without event. It selects, it removes, it reconstructs. And the version of yesterday you carry when you wake up is not yesterday. It's a curated version of yesterday, produced by a process you can't observe and can't control. But here's what no one tells you about what the brain removes and why. Now think about what this means for the people in your life. Every conversation you've had with someone close to you, your partner, your oldest friend, your family, is remembered by both of you, but not in the same way, not the same version. Each of you carried your memory of that conversation into sleep on the night it happened, and each of your brains edited it according to criteria that are at least partly different. What felt important to you was different from what felt important to them. What was emotionally charged for you was different from what was charged for them. And then you both woke up with your respective reconstructions and assumed you remembered the same thing. Researchers studying couples in conflict have found that many disagreements aren't about what actually happened. They're about what each person remembers happening. Two people in the same room, experiencing the same event, sleeping in the same bed that night, and waking up with genuinely different memories of the same moment. Not because one is lying, because the brain edited differently. Your relationships are built on two edited archives that were each modified overnight, thousands of times, for years. The conversations that define how you understand your own history with someone, the fight that changed things, the moment that mattered, the day everything shifted. Those conversations have been reconstructed so many times that what you now remember is at best a compression artifact. A story your brain assembled from fragments it decided to keep, arranged into a shape that feels true. Think about the last time you looked in that mirror after a difficult night, after a fight, or a loss, or a conversation that kept you awake. The face was the same, but you were different. Not because you had decided to be, because while you slept, the brain had already processed what happened, already filed it, already shifted how it weighed against everything else you carry. You didn't change your mind. Your brain changed it for you. And here's the strange part. This doesn't feel like uncertainty. It feels like memory. Solid, specific, yours. Which means the person you think you know best, you, might be the one you know least. Because you're the only one you never get to observe from the outside. But you might be thinking, okay, sure, memory is imperfect. Everyone knows that. This doesn't mean you're a different person when you wake up. Memory doesn't make you who you are. Your values do. Your personality. Your character. Those persist across sleep. And this is a reasonable objection. So let's take it seriously. Your personality, your characteristic ways of responding to the world, does persist, broadly, across sleep. The person who was patient yesterday tends to be patient tomorrow. The traits that define you aren't rewritten every night. But here's what is rewritten. During sleep, your brain processes the emotional content of the day's experiences and, this is the critical part, recalibrates how you feel about them. An experience that felt threatening yesterday can feel manageable after sleep. An argument that felt catastrophic at night can feel minor in the morning. This isn't just you calmed down. This is a neurochemical process. Cortisol levels drop. Threat response circuitry is downregulated. The amygdala's encoding of fear is actively modulated during REM. Which means the you who woke up this morning doesn't just have slightly different memories. You have slightly different emotional orientations toward those memories. And how you feel about things shapes, continuously and immediately, how you decide, how you act, who you are in practice, not just in theory. I'll be honest, This is the part where I'm not sure the science has fully caught up to the question. We know the brain recalibrates emotion during sleep. We know this changes behavior, but whether that's enough to say the self is genuinely different or just recalibrated is something the research hasn't settled. What it has settled is this: you are not the same configuration of responses on waking that you were on sleeping. Something changed. The question is what we call it. Your personality is the riverbank. Your emotional state is the water. Sleep changes the water every night. Here's what this is actually telling us, and it's stranger than it sounds. We've been asking, does sleep change the person? But that's the wrong question, because it assumes there's a stable, fixed person underneath the sleep, something that either persists or doesn't. What if there isn't? What if the self isn't a thing that sleep either preserves or modifies, but a thing that sleep produces? Not once, at birth. Every night. Think about it this way. You don't experience yourself during deep sleep. There's no continuous stream of consciousness threading from last night's self to this morning's self. There's a gap. And across that gap, your brain has been running a reconstruction process, selecting, consolidating, recalibrating, and then essentially generating the version of you that wakes up. That version has continuity with yesterday. It has your memories, the ones that were kept. It has your values, your personality. But it was assembled. It didn't persist. It was made. Again, the question, what happens to you while you sleep, has a direct answer. You stop, and then you're rebuilt. And here's the implication that changes everything. If you're rebuilt every morning, then the you looking in the mirror isn't something that survived the night. It's something that was produced by the night. The mirror isn't showing you a continuous self. It's showing you today's version. And if that's true, humans have been living with this problem for thousands of years, trying to solve it without the science to name it. What did they find? Every culture in history has had a theory of what sleep is, and almost none of them thought it was simply rest. The ancient Egyptians believed sleep was a temporary death, that the soul left the body and traveled somewhere else. Dreams were communications from that elsewhere. The priests of Imhotep would perform temple sleep. Patients would sleep in sacred spaces, hoping for a divine dream that would diagnose their illness. They understood, without neuroscience, that something happened during sleep that was beyond ordinary waking experience. That sleep wasn't the absence of life. It was another kind of it. The ancient Greeks had similar practices in the temples of Asclepius. Indigenous traditions across every continent treated the dream state as a form of consciousness, not lesser, but different. The self, during sleep, was understood as being somewhere else, not diminished, relocated. These weren't superstitions. They were early attempts to explain something real, that the person who woke up wasn't simply the continuation of the person who went to sleep. Something had happened in between, something that mattered. And now, Derek Parfit. Parfit was a British philosopher who, in the 1980s, began thinking seriously about what personal identity actually is, not as a philosophical abstraction, but as a genuine question. What makes you the same person over time? He wasn't thinking about sleep specifically. He was thinking about cases like brain transplants, teleportation, gradual replacement of neurons. But the question was the same. At what point does a person stop being the same person? And here's how Parfit described the moment his thinking shifted. He was recovering from an illness. Nothing serious, but enough to keep him in bed for several days. and he found himself genuinely uncertain whether the person who would recover was the same person who had gotten sick. Not in a dramatic sense, in a quiet, philosophical sense. He realized he couldn't find a fact, any fact, that would definitively answer the question yes or no. There were memories that connected him to his past self. There were values and personality traits that would persist, but there was no single substance, no soul, no continuous thread that he could point to and say, "This is what makes me me, regardless of what changes." His conclusion: there is no deep fact about personal identity. There are just psychological connections, memories, personality traits, values, linked in chains. The chain continues. But whether it's the same person at both ends is a question that has no answer, because same person isn't the kind of thing that has a fact of the matter. What Parfit thought was unsettling, he eventually found liberating. If there's no deep fact to protect, then the self is not a possession. It's a process, not a stone, a river. And sleep is where the river runs. Go back to that mirror for a moment. The face, the recognition, the assumption of continuity. Now this question: if the self is rebuilt every night, can the reconstruction go wrong? Yes, and we know exactly how. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it makes you a measurably different person. Decision-making degrades, empathy decreases, emotional regulation collapses. The sleep-deprived self is, by every behavioral measure, less capable, less connected, less itself. But here's what's interesting about that. We tend to describe sleep deprivation as impairing the self, as if the real self is still in there, just struggling to express itself. But if the self is a product of sleep, if it's rebuilt each night, then a self deprived of quality sleep isn't an impaired version of some truer self underneath. It's a badly reconstructed version. The process ran, but it ran poorly. And the output is someone who functions less well, connects less fully, makes worse decisions. Which means that you is not a fixed thing that sleep either preserves or interrupts. It's an outcome, something that sleep either does well or doesn't. And here's what's strange about that. You have relatively little control over it. You can go to bed at the right time. But what your brain actually does with the night, which memories it keeps, how it recalibrates your emotional state, how thoroughly it integrates experience into identity. That process happens to you, not with you. You're the product of a process you don't supervise. Every single morning. So go back to the mirror. The face looking back at you. The face you recognized without thinking about it. What you've discovered, following this thread, is that this recognition is real, but not in the way you assumed. It isn't recognition of something that persisted unchanged through the night. It's recognition of something that was rebuilt overnight to be continuous with what came before. You're not continuous the way a stone is continuous. You're continuous the way a river is. Always moving, always different in composition, always recognizably itself. William James put it simply: the thoughts themselves are the thinker. Not a self that thinks, but thoughts that are the self. The process is the thing. The reconstruction is the person. And every morning you wake up, you carry yesterday's best version of you. Curated, compressed, recalibrated by the most sophisticated editing process that has ever existed. You didn't ask for it. You can't fully understand it. You can't opt out of it. But you can, for a moment, look at the face in the mirror and understand that what you're looking at is not who you were. It's who you became. Overnight. Again, and you don't remember any of it. The question the Egyptians carried into their temples, the question Parfit couldn't resolve, the question the man who forgot his anniversary dinner never thought to ask. Not who are you, but who gets to decide. Look in the mirror, not to find the answer, but to notice that you're still asking.